Hello Ryan, and hello to everyone else who is not Ryan and is watching this, but this is mainly for Ryan, since these are his 2 lightsaber commissions that I got completed. I want to start off by saying I apologize for not getting this done a little bit sooner, the video, because a couple things came up unexpectedly that I had to fix, mainly the NeoPixel connector in here, and I'll be going over that once I get to that lightsaber. So, first of all, let's just go over what these two are installed with. This is a Proffie board, no extra features, just straight up Proffie. This one is CFX, force activation, Bluetooth, OLED display, blade detection, the works. Everything is in here perfectly as I normally like to do. Anyways, let's move on and show this off first. I'll put this off to the side for a second. So what we have here is the Revan. I believe this is the Revan Dark V2 from Corbanth. I could be remembering that wrong, but I believe that's what this is. This is pretty straightforward. I'll go over everything that is on the hilt here. Blade plug, it's held in by this set screw clearly. And this set screw, this is used to hold in the chassis. You pretty much never need to open this up because you have access to everything you need on the inside, but I suppose if you ever need to replace anything or do maintenance of any kind, you can just remove that screw, pull the chassis out, these buttons will fall out, and then you can have access to the rest of the lightsaber. Now to have access to the chassis, you just unscrew the pommel here. Actually, never mind, it's been a little bit. You unscrew this part, this middle section, not the pommel. You can if you want, but you won't get anywhere with it. So you unscrew the middle part. And here you have it. You've got your 28mm base speaker. You have the Proffie board. You have your kill switch, battery contacts, negative, positive. I have 2 batteries here for you, one for this lightsaber, one for the Anakin. This is installed with a Proffie V2, and it has my standard font that I have in here, standard setup. SD card is right here. If you need access to it, you could just pop this up a little bit. You can pop the board up. There you go. You can pull it out with some tweezers or with your fingers, and then you have the micro USB, and you can just push it back in. These are your 2 buttons. I believe you asked for this one to be the auxiliary and this one to be the activation. I don't remember exactly, but we'll see once we turn it on. This is made by Guthrie Designs, the chassis. There you go. I believe you sent me the chassis along with all of the parts except the NeoPixel connector and I think some of the buttons on the inside. Let's put in a battery, see how this works. Negative towards the speaker, positive towards the blade. There we go. So when you remove this, you're going to want to use some flat device to try and pry it out. What I like to do is have my tweezers here at the back end, stick it in the gap here, push down and pull out, and then that kind of allows you easier access. I do want to mention that the buttons will rattle because unfortunately that's just how they are made. They are slightly too small for the cutout of the hilt itself, so if you see here, it will be moving. What I did do is 3D print and design tiny little circles that look like this here, if it'll focus. So I printed out tiny little circles for underneath the button. That reduces the amount of space between the brass button here and the actual buttons on the chassis, so it reduces the amount of rattle there. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about the rattling sideways. Has gesture controls. It also has, I believe this was this is the activation, auxiliary. Let's put the blade in. Has about 30 fonts. And 30 blade styles that I set up, all my standard setup that I do with most of my Proffie lightsabers. Here we go. It takes a 1-inch blade. I like the KR pixel strip blades, 122 pixel length. which is 122 on one side and 122 on the other, for those of you who are unfamiliar. I tried my best to mix up blade styles as well, not just the colors.
This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Yes.
Unstable blade.
Take your weapon. Strike me down with all of your hatred. I find your faith disturbing. Commander, smooth fun.
Rainbow blade.
Smooth gray. Teensy.
This one's pretty cool. It's like a lava lamp. Don't know if you can tell on screen here. This is the battery level indicator. This is showing green, so it's pretty much all the way charged, and then it'll change color and then go down the blade as you progress. And then we're back to the beginning. And then of course it has everything else that you need in a Proffie lightsaber. Gesture controls, melt, tip, all the different modes. So super, super fun. Something else you should keep in mind if you haven't worked with a Proffie lightsaber before is the SD card. It has the config file in it that I put in there so you can edit whenever you want, and then it also has all of the sound fonts. And then the micro USB is how you upload the config file itself, and then you're never going to want to have the battery in and the micro USB plugged in at the same time. And I believe that's all you need to know about this lightsaber in particular. So I'll be moving on to the Anakin lightsaber, which has a lot more going on to it. This one is nice and simple, easy to manage. I'll just be putting all of this back. There we go. I'll put it back into its container. There we go. And now, moving on to the Anakin lightsaber. As you can see here, we have the Flex V2, I believe, from Corbanth, which is very, very similar, if not precisely exactly the same hilt as the Knight AS3 from KR Sabers. From the looks of it, the insides, the outsides, it's all pretty much the same. So I already had a compilation of all the parts you need, and I had the chassis that I designed for that hilt because I'm planning to install the Knight AS3. I had all of that set up and ready, so I could just install it straight away. But as you know, the OLED display was acting up, and I actually had a broken one in that list of parts there, or the collection of parts, so I had to order a new one, which is what took a little bit longer. And then the next issue was the NeoPixel connector, because I don't know why, but for some reason the NeoPixel connector that I was using was the short pin connectors, but when it went in here and the blade went in, the blade didn't make contact with the pins, which makes no sense because I used this exact same design for multiple other of these lightsabers, so I don't know exactly what was up with it. There was something different going on, but what I had to do was I had to remove all the small pins, all the short pins, replace them with these extra long pins that I had. Not extra long, but I had an additional amount of long pins just off to the side. That took me quite a while because for some reason it's not very easy for me to remove solder from these pads, especially not enough to put more pins in place because the hole has to be big enough. And if you get any solder on here, it prevents it actually prevents the little pin from pushing in. I don't know if it'll focus on it. There we go. So if you get any solder on it, it prevents it from pushing in. So removing all the solder takes a very long time. So I spent a long time yesterday night, I believe, working on that. And then this chassis design is slightly new from the previous ones that I have made for the Anakin lightsaber. I added some design rings up top, which I think look pretty nice. I also have some guide channels here for any side screws you may want to add or have in the hilt. We don't have any in this hilt. You don't need it. You just have this guide channel going to the buttons. And that, you just line it up with the control box here, and it just slides right in place perfectly. Now, the other issue I came across that took me some time and why I couldn't get this video out immediately was when I added the extra long pins, when I put them in the hilt, I pretty much had guessed I was going to need to do this at the end of the build, but I had forgotten about it. But when you put it in, put the lightsaber in, it actually will push the hilt down a little bit, or the chassis down a little bit if there's any space in the hilt. Which there was. There was about 0.1 inch of space in the back. So it moved the chassis ever so slightly down. And when it did that, it pushed the speaker against this section, which makes it rattle and sound terrible. Which obviously we can't have. So I had to spend some time last night, not very long, but I printed about 3 versions of this. This little plastic ring. I've been doing it for a few builds now. I find it very handy for sort of sandwiching the chassis inside of the hilt itself. It's very nice to keep the speaker away from the end, especially when there's... out of breath here. Talking a lot is tricky. But when there's not enough chassis diameter around the speaker itself to have extra material to stick out to give a little buffer between the speaker and the pommel, that's what this is for. It goes on the other side of the speaker, and the rim, the walls here, go right around the speaker, right on the solid section, so it doesn't touch the speaker itself, it touches the little rim of the speaker. And then it prevents the speaker from being pushed against this and causing that weird rattling sound. And it also serves another purpose of just sandwiching the chassis inside the hilt, so it doesn't move. So that's what I had to do. Works great. And I believe you have the power button on the top and the auxiliary at the bottom. If you ever want to switch the buttons, you can just go into the config files of either one of these and then just swap whether you have activation at the top or bottom. Just swap activation and auxiliary in the config. That's the easy way for you to do. Now, how you operate this is you open up the bottom, you put in the battery, the spring is the negative, the speaker area is the positive. Here's your OLED display. You can press the auxiliary button to cycle through the different screens. You have to press on this part. This part is where the button is, and then this part is where the button is. This is the midi-chlorian scanner, which if I get my magnetic ring here, you can actually, let me go back to the scanner. You can actually see it pop up as the ring gets closer, and then when it hits the threshold, it turns on. And then this is the little animation of it being turned on. You can change all of this in the config files, and you can go to crystalfocus.net to find a whole bunch of other ones that are pre-made, and you can just plop right on here. I'll have a bunch of resources down in the description of this video, both for Proffie and CFX customization, so you'll have a bunch of resources down there for this one. And then, let's see here, what should I move on to? This is the power button. And this is the blade detection feature. I have the non-working font on right now, so that means when there's a blade detached, there's no blade at all, it's going to have this non-working font. Then when the blade goes in, it makes a connection sound, swaps to a working font. You can take the chassis completely out, and this is how you have access to the SD card and the, I guess the micro USB, but it's not like you really need it because you have Bluetooth. Bluetooth will allow you to do pretty much everything that you need from your computer. You could do that Bluetooth on your computer or Bluetooth on your phone. You can update any of the settings. It's really, really handy. The SD card is pretty much where you have all the information you need to customize the lightsaber. You only really need to update the firmware, but you don't even need the micro USB for it. So I'm sure there's a few reasons you need to use it, but that's why it's at the bottom, because it's not as useful. Anyways, that's about it for this. You put it in, line up the buttons, push it all the way in. Make sure you have a battery in place. Screw this on. This is your blade retention right here. You just unscrew the little button, blade plug slides out. Then you can put in your 7/8 inch blade. This is again a KR pixel strip, pixel stick, whichever it is. Push it all the way in. Makes that connection sound, and it's a little muffled because I have it flat. I like to push it against something. You can also just do it freehand here, but make sure it's pushed all the way down when you tighten the blade retention screw. That way, it has the most secure connection from the NeoPixel connector and the blade side connector. Because if it ever wobbles when you're swinging it around or disconnects, reconnects, it can mess up the CFX because it'll confuse it. So, just make sure you push it all the way down, then tighten it, and then you're set. This one I definitely have 30 fonts and 30 blade styles on here. With my CrystalFX setup, you can do color change by pressing both buttons. Spectrum mode, you can then cycle through all your different colors. That's by pressing auxiliary and activation at the same time. If you want to accept the color, you just press the activation or auxiliary, and then that accepts it. But let's go back into spectrum mode. If you hold the button, it'll go into blade profiles, and then you can swap to the different blade animations. There's about 30 ones set up. It's a lot more obvious in person, the difference between these. The camera kind of can't pick up the small details, at least the way that I have it set up. It also has some gesture control, so you can twist activation. And then you cycle through the sound fonts by holding down the auxiliary button. Alright, you hold it right here. I hold it a little bit too far down. There we go.
Sound bank selection.
Press auxiliary to go forward. Press activation to go backwards. If you want to jump forward by 5, press both at the same time.
You are as clumsy as you are stupid. Take your weapon.
The weapon of the Jedi Knight.
Ah, yes. A Jedi's weapon. Nightfall.
And then you accept it by holding down the button. I'll have a whole quick control guide in the description of the video that you can go over if you want. And whether or not those work depends on if they're set up in the config or not. I know most of them are, so if one of them doesn't work, either it's not activating appropriately or it's just not set up on the lightsaber yet. But I will have that in the description to help you out. And then I will also have, as I said, all the customization stuff. Speaking of customization, if you ever do plug in the micro USB port to the computer, you are allowed to have the battery in there. In fact, you kind of need it or else it won't work, which is different from Proffie, because again, Proffie, you don't want to have the battery in when you plug it into the computer, but with CFX, perfectly fine and is actually necessary for it to happen. Now, I think the only other things that I should mention are Bluetooth, or is Bluetooth. So I'll just put this back here. With Bluetooth, CFX, all you need is the CrystalFX app, and then it'll come up with a list of Bluetooth stuff, just find the thing that says FSC BT909LE. FSC BT909LE right there. There you go. Then when you connect for the first time, it will ask you for a password. The password is 6 zeros. I'm also going to have that in the description of the video. So it's 000000. Now, here's where you can go through all of your stuff. You have your blade style library, which is an online library on CrystalFX.net of a ton of different blade styles that you can just upload straight to your lightsaber without having to set it up in the config at all. You have your remote control, which is where you have everything here. This is where you're going to reset your force activation. You just type in the custom command section mag calib, which is magic calibration, then you press send. So that's going to be how you do that. If it ever gets wonky or if it is a bit too sensitive or not sensitive enough, you can just adjust it and it'll ask you to spin the lightsaber hilt. I spin this way and then this way and then I roll it slowly and then you press the auxiliary to accept it. This is also where you're going to be able to update the firmware really easily. You just upload the new firmware to your SD card. And then you rename it to fw.dat, I think. I can't remember, it's been a long time, but there's going to be instructions in the manual, which I'll also have linked to it, or linked down in the description. Sorry, it's really late right now. So once you do that, you go to firmware update, and then you can do, I like bootloader remote, and then you update firmware. Very, very easy. Let me just show you that it works. You can cycle through your fonts. This is unusually loud right now, so I'm going to adjust the volume. I'm going to lower it from 75 to... It might actually be because of the speaker thing that I have there, giving a little bit of extra space, because normally it's not this loud. So I'm going to actually reduce it to around 60. And this updates the config file in the SD card itself.
Main configuration saved.
Still really, really loud. So I'm actually going to lower that a lot more. Let's lower it to about 40.
Main configuration saved.
Much more reasonable. But yes, that is how you operate it on Bluetooth. You can also adjust Bluetooth on the computer as well. You can do Bluetooth on your computer. I've never done that, but you can. So I'm going to polish off your lightsaber here because it gets very greasy very easily. And then I will pack up your lightsabers, send them off to you tomorrow, because actually today was a postal holiday, so I wasn't actually able to drop it off. So it'll be tomorrow when I ship it off, and you'll get them in the mail. If you have any issues, just contact me, and if you need any resources to customize, just check out the description. I'm also going to leave a bunch of information down there that'll help you out that I went over in the video, just as a quick resource guide if you don't want to scan through this entire video. So I hope you enjoy your two lightsabers. I'll grab the other one so you can have a look. Hope you enjoy your two lightsabers. Thank you very much for commissioning them from me, and may the Force be with you.